Today at Let's Talk Marketplace, we talked about
the big news of last week. Zalando wants to buy About You and rearrange the European fashion marketplace landscape in the process.
Together with German e-commerce expert Stefan Wenzel, Valerie and me debate the massive merger and its implications for the marketplace industry.
Have fun listening.
Let's Talk Marketplace.
The Marketplace podcast with Ingrid Lammer and Valerie Dichtel.
Hello and welcome. You're again listening to Let's Talk Marketplace today, and thanks for tuning in. Actually, we wanted to have a rather relaxed, Christmas episode today, looking back on the interesting stuff that happened in this year. Bit of easy reflection, and then, stuff happened. Didn't it, Valerie?
Yeah, definitely. You can really say that stuff happened last week. We were already preparing this week's episode as a recap for this year. And then on Wednesday last week, we sent us news via WhatsApp in the morning, which we just do occasionally because we do it just if it's really urgent and interesting news. And what shall I say? How did I feel when I read it? I first thought this could happen. And then you wrote me, this really happened. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, so we really need to change the topic of this week's episode into a very important one.
Yeah, definitely. Some marketplace news so big that they had us, and I'd like to quote German e-commerce expert Dörte Kastel is here, dropping our gingerbread into our mulled wine. I think that might be the most German description of breaking news that I've ever heard in my whole life, but it's so nice. So, Valerie, let's just get to it. What happened last week that upturned our plans for today?
Yeah, well, what happened? Zalando bought About You. That's what happened. And I read this and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I'm already glad that I didn't spill out of my hot coffee when I read the news, because it has such a crazy effect as as you know, I'm very, very deep into the fashion marketplace, e-commerce business in Europe. And this was holy shit. So, the biggest European marketplace for fashion and shoes took over its direct competitor for 1.13 billion euros. This is a merger on a massive scale. Zalando has over 50 million customers in Europe, About You 42 million. Zalando has a turnover of over 10 million euros, About You makes nearly 2 billion.
Billion.
Billion, yeah. So before Shein came along, those two have clearly dominated the European fashion landscape. And additionally, a big part of the deal is scale. About You e-commerce solution, which will now be merged with Zalando's existing tech stack for marketplace middleware, TradeByte, and marketplace logistics provider Asos. So yes, this is huge.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess your origin industry is quite in an uproar.
Yeah, it's indeed. I got lots and lots of input messages from my industry contacts over the last days. I'm also in a close contact consulting one of their brands. And especially the marketplace people are like, wait, we're in the onboarding, or we got a termination letter beginning of the last week. So it's so many different topics coming in together. It's really crazy, concerning, and also so unpredictable. Yeah. So let's see what will happen. And I guess this is what we talk about today.
Yeah, definitely. Why and how Zalando is taking over About You, and what will now happen to the two companies, and how, especially as this is Let's Talk Marketplace, how this deal will affect the marketplace business that is happening on About You and on Zalando. And for this, let's say I've got two guests for this today. One is Valerie, our European fashion marketplace expert. And to give us a little more perspective on this deal, I have also invited one of Germany's most seasoned e-commerce experts who has been analyzing this deal very closely over the last days. And who very spontaneously decided to join us today. So very warm welcome to Stefan Wenzel. Great to have you on the show, Stefan.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really great to have you here, Stefan. Thanks for taking the time to join us so spontaneously. I know you looked at this deal in great detail already for your own German podcast, Zwei mit Schuss, last week. And I also had a look on that one. So I'm looking forward to your perspective. But before we get started, let's quickly introduce you to our international listeners. So,
sure.
Stefan.
I'm in the industry for 25 years and counting. Joined the digital commerce space in 1999 And pretty quickly onwards, marketplaces, which is the topic of your podcast, started to be part of my life, my professional life. So for the fashion label Max, back in 2006-ish, we introduced technology to interface Max, the fashion label, across other platforms. Back then, mail order ones like the Wekamps of this world in the Netherlands, and so forth. So, pretty early on in, introducing technology, but I've been, busy in that space, not only on the marketplaces side, but also on the retailer side, as well as on the marketplaces side from a, let's say, vendor point of view or provider point of view. So it's a pretty wild mix of working for brands, going onto marketplaces, working for retailers, becoming a marketplace, and working for a marketplace, being eBay as the managing director for eBay Germany, after being responsible for the fashion vertical on eBay. So that's in a nutshell 25 years of marketplaces, let's say at least, indulged experience.
Just a very short time, huh?
And the gray hair is real. Huh? That's not spray. It's not spray gray. The silver lining is genuine.
Well, okay. So I would accumulate, you have 25 years. I have almost 15 years. Ingrid has also 15 years. So we have quite an experience here. So Stefan, what do you do best? What is your USP in this e-com story?
I think over the time, I developed a good sense for bullshit. So I think I have a pretty rapid eye for, smoke in the mirror, kind of, stuff we'd like to explain to each other that isn't genuine. So getting to the surface, getting beneath the surface, understanding what's really going on, I think that's what I think a lot of people would say can be annoying, because it's quite quick to discover BS, but it's also
toes, I guess.
But it's also good fun because you can just bypass the BS and get to the bottom of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually literally what also Ingrid is always doing. She's our BS detector. So
that's why I'm happy.
Let's see if you prove it.
Let's see.
Okay, and then we tested already on this question. So I want to have your honest scout's answer. Did you expect that Zalando will take over About You in 2024?
No. No, I mean, I said it in an interview with Textilwirtschaft. It was long overdue. From a, let's say, market point of view, from an economics point of view, it was overdue because those two concepts are a lot more redundant and have a lot more overlap than I think PR wants to make us believe. So therefore, from an economics point of view, it was overdue, but I didn't expect this in 2024. And fun fact, I sat in front of my laptop on that very morning, and I received the investor relations email from About You. And first I thought, is this, April Fool kind of,
That's what I thought as well,
because
checking the dates.
There was Zalando in the subject line of an About You, investor relations email. I thought, what? Mm-hmm. So, and then I read it, and I read it again, and I read it again. And then I posted it, just that, that investor relations news bit, I posted it on LinkedIn. And then afterwards I realized I was the very first, even before the About You team themselves announced it on LinkedIn. So I was the first to break the news, which was of course hilarious. Not that I'm a breaking news media, but no, I didn't expect it, to be honest, at that very moment at all.
Yeah.
I had a similar reaction there because it was quite funny for me because when back in the day when I worked for my editorial team in the Internet World Business, we always used to joke that, we get out with the next paper, notwithstanding something great happens, like Zalando buying About You. It was one of those things that we always joked about. Yeah. And no one really expected it to happen because, of course, there has always been this talk, especially in the German e-commerce scene, about this would be a good thing to do for the industry itself, but no one really expected it to happen that quickly. And then it happened. And I had the same reaction, okay, is this someone didn't check the dates. Did not realize it's not April anymore.
Yeah.
So it was right. So we're already in the middle of the discussion, I guess. Before we dive deeper into that, we'll take a very quick look at the news of last week that happened apart from the big one, and before that, a very short break and for some advertisement. We would like to quickly introduce you to our sponsor, Plenty One. Plenty One is a German e-commerce service provider which offers an all-in-one solution for your omnichannel business with a very strong focus on marketplaces.
Yeah, Plenty One supports retailers, manufacturers, and brands of all sizes worldwide, providing a powerful platform that covers and manages the entire sales process across more than 150 sales channels. In 2023, more than 160 million orders with a GMV of 9.8 billion euros were processed via the platform. The company's headquarters are in Kassel, and Plenty One has had an additional location in Timisoara, Romania since 2017.
And one focus for Plenty One in the coming months is the expansion of their innovative channel layer technology, which ensures more efficient, standardized marketplace connections and relieves brands and retailers of complex system processes. The channel layer offers a growing portfolio of marketplace integrations and significantly reduces maintenance efforts to support companies in their multi-channel strategy.
Yeah, we will tell you more about this technology in the coming months. And if you are interested to find out more about what Plenty One is doing, we will link their homepage in our show notes.
Okay, so now let's have a short look at what else happened last week. It wasn't that much, actually.
Newsflash.
Another Zalando news, actually, and I thought that was already a big one when it came out, and that is that Zalando has officially launched on TikTok Shop in the UK, partnering there with iconic brands such as Nike, Adidas, All Saints, and Dr. Martens, and so they are now on TikTok Shop lives themselves, and I always find that interesting if a company that is a big marketplace themselves is now using another new platform for their own business. Yeah. And of course, in the UK, TikTok Shop is huge already, so it was really a no-brainer, but still interesting.
Yeah. Well, I would also say that it's interesting, but we also need to take into consideration that these brands like Nike, Adidas, All Saints, and Dr. Martens, like you said, they are also, I'm pretty sure, wholesale brands for Zalando. So we have still this mixture of like wholesale and marketplace business. And I think that's also a reason why this is even also more interesting for Zalando.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Stefan, you're looking at TikTok Shop already? Any views on that?
Yes, indeed. I mean, not using, but observing. I think it's in some parts an underappreciated challenger. I think it will be highly relevant and significant. And more social networks and entertainment platforms are likely to follow what I called the QVC-ization of social media. So I think there will be more vertical integration of commerce into, what other people may call social networks. So with that in mind, I think it's super relevant. To what extent retailers like Zalando can sustain a reasonable margin, even on their own wholesale goods, is to be seen. It's subsidized at the moment. Over time, it'll be difficult to make a living by adding more and more middle layer, if you will, between consumers and the cost of goods. But it makes an awful amount of sense to be where users are, and they tend to be on TikTok, as we know.
Yeah, definitely. So looking on the start of TikTok Shop in Spain and in Ireland already, I'm rather sure lots of those are to follow next year in Europe.
I would like to squeeze in a news I got from many different sellers last week. On Monday, Zalando sent out some termination letters again for fashion sellers, terminating the brand till from end of May 2025 on. And it's still not very clear why Zalando is doing this, but they terminated even like well-running, growing brands, even like with a higher recommended retail price.
So not just those can't realize a profit brands
No,
that were...
no.
Oh,
No,
okay.
we had like this feedback of like one brand which is like growing by 40% and selling on all different countries. And they were like, wait, what? This is like, and so there were like so many news last week about Zalando. There's a huge insecurity in the market right now, I would say.
Yeah, I think we should return to that as well, because the question there is, of course, is that does that have anything to do with the deal or not? I think, but let's return to that later on. What else do they have? Amazon will be opening its next country website now in Ireland. Sellers are already being invited to list for selling on Amazon.ie. And they have already appointed a country manager for Amazon's retail business in Ireland called Alison Dunn. Yeah, Ireland. Interesting country.
I mean, next step, huh?
That's the next one. So I'm part of the Pan-EU program, so I guess a no-brainer for everyone who's already on Amazon. Okay, right. I guess that were the most important news apart from the big one. So let's return to the big one after another very short break.
Bird is an e-commerce fulfillment provider that can handle logistics across all of Europe and is particularly good for tricky cases in addition to standard services. For example, when best before dates for food or cosmetics need to be observed, or when strict specifications have to be adhered to when shopping products that sport organic labels. Bird, written BYRD, has an organic certified warehouse for this purpose.
Yes, and if tracking must be possible for individual batches, when shipping beauty products, for example, or food supplements, they're also a good e-commerce fulfillment solutions partner. Or when sensitive electronic parts need to be packed in particularly shock-resistant packaging or stuff like that. A selection of more than 15 logistic options helps you find the best solution in each case.
Yeah, and the seamless integration into platforms such as Amazon or WooCommerce helps retailers to make their fulfillment efficient and smooth. Integrations with partners such as Plenty One, Channel Engine, and Bilby make the solution particularly interesting for marketplace sellers. And that's why brands like Refurbed, Wear Knitters, Manuka Honey, Babu, and Friends and Lakritz by Bülow trust Bird.
If you want to find more about them, we'll link the website in the show notes, as usual. Okay, so now let's turn over to the biggest news with a capital N from last week and talk about the merger of two of the biggest online marketplaces for fashion and shoes inside Europe and what that means.
Topic of the week.
Right. So I'll hand you over to you, Stefan, because you have looked into this case in quite detail last week and already debated about it yourself several times and were interviewed on it. So maybe you can just summarize the deal for us. What happened there and why is this so huge? What would you say?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first, I think it's helpful to zoom out for a start. I mean, remember, About You was founded 6 years after Zalando has kind of started to set fashion into motion. So Zalando, the big blueprint for e-commerce, online fashion, really scared the heck out of traditional retailers in that space. And then 6 years later, in 2014. About You was founded, and back then everybody said, Jesus, well, that's brave. And guess who's behind it? Otto. And Otto, highest respect. I've worked twice for the Otto group, but it was never seen as being overly bold or brave or,
innovative.
Or
groundbreaking.
A challenger. Yeah. And all of a sudden they launched a challenger as a kind of a venture, startup within the corporate structure, but set aside in a way that was protected. And it really, ever since, was the showcase for venture building, in larger companies. So that was, and they started hugely successful. I mean, they got decent traction pretty early on. They seemed to be, always a bit faster, always a bit, more, aggressive, nimble, frugal, And they went public in 2021, which was kind of the pinnacle that, became unicorn. They had unicorn status all of a sudden, Hamburg-based, great story, great founders, great team. So that was all great. But from then onwards, things started to become a lot more difficult for them. So valuation back then when they launched was more than 4 billion, the market cap, 4 billion.
Yeah, like 25 euros per share or something like that.
And then it declined continuously and pretty rapidly after COVID. It declined to approximately 700 million in market cap before they now made that announcement. So 700 million. So that's a huge discount also on the revenue. So the sentiment in the capital markets clearly were against them. And I know the story had been for quite some time, it had been that they outperformed their peers, especially, Zalando. But in 2024, that also turned differently. So in 2024, they kind of went different paths, and Zalando started to be appreciated by the capital markets, more positively. And on the reverse happened to About You. So very difficult situation, difficult valuation, market cap feedback. And then, look at the owner structure. The Otto Group, including the family, still owns approximately 45%. And the Otto Group, as we know, is in difficult times as well. So there is huge need for capital, liquidity, management attention. And if you put all that together, I think it is ultimately the driver behind, what then happened is they, went out and said, listen, we're going to sell this company. 6.5 euros per share has been the offer to the market, which is more than 100% to what it was the 3 months before. So, it was seen to be a decent offering for those stockholders. And all the owners that are involved. And keep in mind, the owner of the bestseller group is through his investment vehicle called Heartland, which is a fun fact that he's also invested in Zalando and in Asos.
And Asos, yeah. And in so many different ones,
yeah. So they agreed that 6.5 euros is a share price that they would offer to sell their shares for. They agreed this. And this is now being put out there. I mean, it still needs to be, approved, but it's what the offer is at the moment. Which means if you do the maths, it's kind of, $1 billion-ish on, capital income. And if 45% is owned by the Otto family, I mean, it depends on what details may play out in the background. But it's like a 400 to maybe 600 million-ish income or liquidity package that the Otto family generates from this. And this needs to be seen in the light of the fact that Otto has been, it's been told that the investment has been around 300 million into About You in the 10 years of that build up. So 300 million in terms of, expenditure. Plus, and that's what people tend to forget, all the opportunity cost, because that has been a high profile project within the group. So there have been, open books on acquiring customers from other companies within the group, access to assortment left, right, and center, priority in logistics in any project, tech. I mean, they had it all. No company in the Otto Group ever had that degree of support that they had. So, there is more to it than just the 300 million in terms of capital expenditure. And that's what the bottom line of this is. They now decided to step out of the role as a challenger. They gave it now to the company that they tried to challenge. And I think that's part of the story as well. We've lost a challenger in the marketplace overall.
That's where I turn over to you. Well, maybe before we get into the debate what this means, maybe you can give us an idea how important was the About You as a challenger and also as a marketplace competitor to the big lead, to Zalando for the industry.
I would say overall we need to face that we have not so many big online sales channels anymore in fashion overall in Europe, and About You is top 2 in terms of like if we see the whole fashion market, we have Zalando, top 1, top 2 About You, and then we have the local heroes, Amazon, etc. So we have those, and Zalando and About You are both combining wholesale business and marketplace business. So yes, we have this marketplace perspective as well. We come to that later. But seeing now that they are the two biggest one are merging, it's a bit like we had it in the past with Galeria and Karstadt, where also like many brands had difficulties when they merged because they were also top 1 and 2, and now they shared like the buying terms and conditions. Everyone knows from each other like what is the assortment. You cannot say like, oh yeah, okay, if Zalando is not buying About You, might be some of our backup. That's not the case. That won't be the case anymore, and it makes the fashion brands overall much more dependent on those one big player now. And it's even risky, and so the dependency and the codependency on this channel now is really crazy, and this is where I see a really big risk for the fashion brands, either if they're wholesale and doing marketplace business. Yeah,
definitely. But as you say, Zalando and About You have been 1 and 2 for a long time. I think now we have to consider Shein, which is now somewhere in the middle between those two, in many countries, not yet in Germany, but in many other European countries. So, Stefan, is this the only way for Zalando to defend its position against Shein, buying its second most important competitor?
I mean, the first thing, and I would really invite people who discuss this to really make sure that they're clear on the perspectives we're taking. There was always a market perspective, then there is a perspective from Otto versus Zalando versus About You. Yeah. So, from a market perspective, I agree. We're losing a challenger, but at the same time, it's what markets do. They consolidate redundancy. This was redundant enough to be consolidated. Had the propositions been more differentiated, maybe this would not have been so easy. Yeah, so that's and it's kind of pointless to argue against that. That's the nature of a market. It cleans itself to some extent. From a Zalando point of view, they buy 20% profit dilutive top line. Mm-hmm. So let's not fool around. Yeah. So it's 20%, which in the past has been a decent and average growth rate for them. So it's nice, but it's not a game changer. It's 20%. It's nice, but it's margin dilutive. It's profit dilutive because About You is yet not profitable. Zalando is, and they aren't. So they're taking a toll on Zalando's profitability, which isn't helpful. They're now trying to identify, or they did identify 100 million of so-called synergies, which at the end of the day is a mix of things. It's overhead, it's buying power, it's marketing, efficiencies. It's most importantly, it's leveraging the operating lever that they have on warehousing and logistics, that they combine volumes. So that package is 100 million. The sooner they get this through the door, the more it makes sense from a Zalando point of view to add 20% to the top line. Mm-hmm. But what I would say is it most likely will not help against competitors like the Sheins of this world, because what they do is something very different. Even although About You was trying to move more into the head-to-head Shein competitor corner with being, aggressive on promotions and starting to introduce gamification, they try to appeal younger. It's more app-based, but not really. They started to do factory to consumer. Well, they are in preparation of factory to consumer pilots for white labels that they operate, which is all all, fine, but it's not really, an answer against, Shein. And Zalando does something else. Zalando tries to move up the ladder, tries to stay away from price and being cheap and cheerful, be more, more grown up, being more on brand. That's why they also clean their portfolio. They want to reduce the noise that they have on the platform and also in their offering. So I have more hopes that this is, a positive differentiation against a price play, young audiences, like the Sheins of this world. But I would not say that this will secure Zalando from Shein. I don't think so. It does strengthen their footprint overall in the European mid-market to upper market e-commerce space for sure. But most importantly, it eats away a challenger that is a bit like, I think it's like the naughty nephew that Zalando always felt about you was. It's the naughty nephew is yelling in your ear, isn't really doing much damage, but is still naughty and is of annoyance. And this gets solved. So they eat this. But Shein, I'm afraid, won't be enough.
And I would also say and I agree, Stefan, with you, definitely. And in terms of like the brand perspectives on like this Shein, Zalando About You topic, there is not that big change. Shein, there are not many brands selling yet on marketplace business. Brands are still not addicted to, let's sell our products on Shein. There are already some products, and we also talked about that in another episode. But the brands, it's like a tiny, tiny part which is already selling themselves on this marketplace at Shein. So Shein has like much more other products right now to sell. And in the effect of like what's like the biggest effect for brands is really this merging About You and Zalando, also for the near future. And the long-term perspective, I'm pretty sure Shein will also get bigger and bigger and more sufficient and interesting for brands. But this still needs, I would say, some years. Let's see if I prove wrong. But in terms of like buying, assortment, turnover in the short run, this merging About You and Zalando is a big one for the brands.
And I mean, one sentence on Shein, because I've seen that some parts of our bubble already declared the death of Temu and Shein. It's peak, all of it.
Yeah, sorry,
I would be a bit careful. What other player do we have in the fashion space that is north of 50 billion euro top line and grows at 20+%? I mean, just name one. Yeah. There is
no one. No.
So, the fact that they come from 40 and halved it to 20, yes. It's two ways of looking at it. I would say, if you look at it glass half full, I would say 20% at 50+ billion is still a decent performance. And there is no reason in the world that they wouldn't move up the price ladder. There's no reason in the world that they at some point are not welcoming, mainstream brands, because brands go where traffic is. At some point, the first starts and then others will follow. Yeah. And it already did start. But maybe that's not even interesting for Shein. It's a nice halo because brands give them credibility and trust. At the end of the day, they've come a long way without this.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation a couple of days ago with Alexander Graf about She Glam. I mentioned it in the other podcast as well. She Glam is a cosmetics brand of Shein. 4.5 million followers on Instagram. One of the fastest growing cosmetic beauty brands apparently at the moment. Nobody ever heard of. It's not a brand as you and I, would maybe define it.
No, it's like these Amazon brands we also had in the past, but with much more power and speed.
They have the traffic, they have the attention, they also have the credibility in their audience, for their audiences to be, to deliver on trend and so forth. So, maybe we don't consider that as being a brand, but who cares what we say? It's the consumer who does the voting. And apparently at the moment, they are, more on brand. They are more frequent in updating assortments. They're closer to what's hot and whatnot. They have a price point you can't beat. They're improving quality. I would be really careful to discount them, and I wouldn't limit them to be only cheap and cheerful at all. I would take them really seriously. And therefore, I would say this problem remains.
Yeah, that's a whole different episode, actually, because, I saw those debates as well. And I think this is a German debate. I have a feeling of this is a German debate because there was, for our international listeners, there was some debate going on about, okay, Temu is losing momentum and Shein is losing momentum and so on. This is, but I just looked at the user numbers and compared them over several European countries. And well, in Germany, Shein and Temu are still at around 1/5 of the internet users that are actually using Shein and Temu once a month. So this does not compare to the numbers in, say, France or in Spain or Portugal or Italy or whatever, where those competitors are much stronger and are still growing fast. So I think this is something that people like to tell themselves. They're going to go away. I don't need to care about them.
Yeah.
But as I say, this is a whole different debate, and maybe we should continue this next year or something. For now, let's return to the problem at hand and maybe debate, because as you said, Stefan, this is something that we can't do anything about. So the two have now merged and this is the new reality. But what does this mean for brands and retailers using the platforms? So Valerie, maybe, what do you think will happen?
Well, there is already a lot of things happening. So I'm like in a onboarding case with both at the same time. So with About You and Zalando. And it's really like switching from connected retail to partner program, for example. Within the process, Zalando stopped and said like, okay, you know what? This process is on ice till at least February. Let's see. And we were like, great. We're like so close before going online. And it's also many brands approaching me like, hey, Valerie, can you connect us to Zalando? We want to go online there. And I'm like, whew. Tough thing right now. No, it's not. It's more like if you're not an A brand, I don't even want to try, because it's like they are really, really up leveling right now. This is what I truly get. This is what they are doing already. It's like nothing new, right? But there's a second phase, I would say, because we had this phase already last year. Now we have it like and postponing, the sales till end of May next year. So, this time with a more let's say with a better timing, because the order season for the fashion brands has not yet started for autumn winter. And now they can sell the spring-summer collection, and that's it so far. And what we see is like different angles. So brands are surprised by getting terminated again. We have the other ones who are like the A brands, which are still performing and growing, and they are also having good collaborations with them. In terms of About You, I would say it's still easier to integrate, and we will see also some, there's not just bad things, right? But we see also some good points on About You, Zalando merging. For example, let's talk about the logistics service Asos. Zalando is already trying for this whole year to get more and more people into this logistics service, which means, like, just to explain it, what Asos does is we have Zalando Fulfillment Services, ZFS, which is the fulfillment for Zalando. It's like equivalent to FBA at Amazon. And ZFS is shipping the products to Zalando's end consumers. What Asos is doing is shipping your products to the Zalando consumers, but also if you are selling to About You or Asos, guess why? You can also ship it with Asos already for this year. So there will be it will be a lot more easier to put your stock together and to ship it from maybe one logistic hub, let's see, to the different marketplaces, which is better because you can have your stock at one place, and you don't have the splitted stock all over the different marketplaces. So that will become easier. Hopefully the prices will also go down but let's see. I mean, now you are even more dependent to it and cannot say like, okay, we shift more to this part or this part. So there's like so many different influences. Stefan, what's your opinion about, I mean, now they acquired TradeByte already some years ago, Zalando, which is a marketplace middleware. Now they got Scale from About You. How do you see like this technical integration on terms of like the marketplace side? Because I know you are also deep in those marketplace topics.
I mean, the first thing is I still can't believe that Scale is part of that package of that deal. I mean, I still struggle to believe that, and maybe there is still news to come that Scale will be carved out. I don't know, because I mean, imagine look at the logos on Scale's customer list. Mm-hmm. You will find a lot of auto companies on that list. Mm. So. Yes. What does that even mean? Does that mean that Zalando operates part of the Otto Group's online shops? I mean, I struggle to imagine that.
That's what it looks like at the moment. I mean, they're taking it over and want to, at least that's what the press release is saying, integrate Scale completely into the Zalando tech stack.
I'm not sure if that's really the final verdict on this, but if it was the final verdict and it is part of that transaction, then obviously a lot of things will still most likely change on the back of it. Overall, if Scale was to be part of it, of course, it fills a gap for Zeos because they didn't have any e-commerce, let's say, shop technology at all. So that makes sense. I think it makes the whole proposition pretty comprehensive. That's good for the industry. It's not so good that they lose a competitor. I mean, without a doubt, terms and conditions will change. And I would bet that the increasing margins will not be passed on to the partners. So this is likely to be just an improvement on that new, let's say, monopolist. That's at least a scenario which I would consider to be more on the darker side. On the brighter side of things, I hope, I mean, the way I see this is you have two front ends, if you will, to consumer brands. One is Zalando being more grown up. One is About You, hopefully being more differentiated towards, young and more, faster fashion, if you will. So if those are two front ends, and if everything else gets merged, so everything in the back end gets merged onto one technology stack and one operation stack, then of course that makes life as well also easier for people, to choose where to sell, to onboard, to have, retail media propositions for both. About You has been a lot stronger on the influencer side, marketing side of things, has been a lot stronger in Eastern Europe than Zalando. So you kind of maybe get, 1 + 1 becomes 3 for some of the things. But overall, I'm just cautious that in terms of, the seller economics, I'm slightly skeptical that this will be breaking good news.
Mm. I'm also quite excited about the topic of like data and content, because now if I have a look on like the onboarding regulations or the content and data which Zalando needs and About You needs, this is also like two different ways in some of the parts. So merging content data about those two platforms. You also talk with Dirta about in this other podcast. It's really crazy. I have no clue how they are going to do this. Pushing everything on like at Zalando or in About You or still on both, and matching those data is crazy.
I mean, at the end of the day, the post-merger integration piece of this is mind-blowing. I mean, in all respects, front and back end. I mean, to make this one, let's say, stack, I mean, that's a huge endeavor, including risk. That we haven't talked about. So this is not a no-brainer, for it to work out as Excel told them during the case for this. So it's there is risk down the line, but still, it is what it is, and there are smart people involved, and they will have an army of people trying to make sure that those synergies, the 100 million plus, materialize rather quickly. And on the back of that, my hope is that despite terms and conditions, streamlining and harmonizing things for sellers, for vendors, for brands. That's of course one hope. I think that's a fair hope to be had, and then we'll see if that's naive or if it materializes.
Yeah, but that will take a while, and during this process, I think things are not going to be very funny for brands and retailers trying to sell on it.
And that's a risk. And that's a risk, by the way.
It's a real risk, yeah.
The more those two companies are now busy with themselves, and they have to be, but the more they take the eye off the market ball, the more room it leaves for others, especially for Shein, for example. Yeah. But also AliExpress or Trendyol, whoever wakes up, it just gives them more room now to wiggle and bypass those two. Yeah.
And what I can also see from the market is like, okay, let's see. We have Zalando About You. There's like a huge unpredictability in this case and a big insecurity. And now the brands are like, where can we go? Where can we expand now to share, like to diversify more in our marketplace portfolio, not to be dependent on like 80% of our turnover of those two? So where can we expand to? Are there any different countries, different marketplaces? Where can we go now to leverage our effect? So it's like really, that's a real big thing, which I already feel is like, okay, where can we go now? Can we go to Bräuninger? It's like, well.
Yeah, but it's going to be interesting who is going to take up these low-hanging fruits there, because there's lots of brands now looking for new, as you said, new homes to go to.
Additional home, I would say.
Yeah, additional ones maybe. But speaking of this, I mean, we have now talked about how difficult it is to put a merger like this into real effect if you really talk business, and talk like the nitty-gritty details of tech stack and stuff. So considering this, there have been a lot of rumors that now Zalando should go on and take over Asos as well, like one is a party, two is a row, whatever. But how serious is that, Stefan? What do you think about that?
I think as a mind game, it makes an awful amount of sense. Mm-hmm. I mean, part of the ownership structure is similar. Asos is, don't forget, I mean, we're talking about, who's big. Asos is bigger than About You, right? Yeah. There's 3 billion-ish top line. I mean, it's a company in stress. But it's still, with 3 billion, it's still a lot bigger than About You. And they're really cheap at the moment, so they're at a 20% of top line. The market cap is 20% of the top line. So it's really affordable. It's a company that smells like up for grabs, but it's also, some would say, it's a falling knife. So watch out what you're catching. This is a difficult case. It's a company in distress. But of course,
it's also covering the UK market, where both of them are not pretty well established right now.
Exactly. Yeah. So conceptually, it's cheap. It's UK. It's relatively big in terms of top line. It's not profitable, or it's distressed. But About You isn't profitable either. So that's. So conceptually, a lot of reasons why that could make sense. I think, from an operational point of view, I have no imagination. How could that possibly work?
No, it sounds like harakiri. To be very honest.
You need to be able, to chew what you bite. And I think, digest the first one and see, are you actually able to deliver an integration of that scale? I don't think that Zalando, Highsnobiety is very different. It's not an integration as such. It was a small investment in comparison. So I don't think they've ever made an acquisition like that at all. So show that you're able to pull this off. Yeah. And then and see. Yeah. But in terms of alternatives, there's of course, you do the magic quadrant, or however you call this, your own product. So I think there is choice. None of them is as big, but you have the El Corte Inglés. That's a 15-16 billion powerhouse. It's not as advanced on marketplaces, but the stuff in the Netherlands, with Wekamp and Ball and what have you. So it's always worth to look at, alternatives and see, can you pull it off and still be profitable enough because of the higher logistic costs to go abroad. But I mean, generally speaking, it's always good to put, to not put all eggs in one basket. And if you did, and it was Zalando, or worst case, it was about you, now is a good wake-up call to say, let's diversify.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Talking about this, it's interesting that just today I read news by a marketplace integrator that they were now opening a connection to Asos, which up to now has been fiendishly difficult to board onto. And I think they're opening up as well, might be part of this whole situation that's going on here. Yeah. Lots of interesting things, I think. We've nearly been talking for an hour now. Maybe some last words? Stefan, what do you think? I think when I looked at that whole business, I was like, is Otto now selling its family jewels? Is this the beginning of the end for the Otto group? What would you say?
I mean, first of all, I think it is great to have an impulse, a stimulus of that size for our space. I mean, it's like we've been, I don't know, rattling along and complaining and moaning, and it kind of felt like we've lost a bit the mojo, right? And everybody was hoping that consumer sentiment will change. None of the crisis has anything to do with us. It's just the consumer that isn't in a good mood. And of course, that's wrong. So I think it's great to have change happening with that order of magnitude. So I do hope that it does unleash energy overall in our space, also from a capital markets point of view. I hope. In terms of the Otto Group, I think it'll be interesting giving away fashion, which was one of their key parts of the offering. I mean, it's sports, it's electronic, home and living, and fashion. I think that's what they tried to position themselves with. I think now they kind of gave up on fashion, at least for younger demographics. So that will be an interesting space to watch. How do they continue their journey? Overall, the worst thing that happens is that we now lose momentum. The worst thing is that we consider ourselves to be in the center of gravity and not the consumer and not the market. So that's the only watch out, I would say. Innovate towards consumers, try to differentiate in a positive sense from the price place from Asia, try to innovate and add value where at the moment we only see low prices. And that means, focus your energy on innovation rather than post-merger integration. And that's my only call out. Don't get bogged down by your internal view. Keep in mind, we're doing it for the consumers.
Mm-hmm. Valerie, final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I represent often the brand side, right? Like, I would really go for stay calm, go forward. And really diversify and see where you can extend, and also how you combine internally the topics Zalando About You, and have an answer on that one if it's coming. I would say to be prepared and to go on expansion for other homes, additional homes. I think that's a good one. And take it step by step.
Yeah, goes on the agenda for next year. Right. I guess, and this is where we conclude our debate on maybe the biggest news for 2024, at least in our marketplace area. So, and if you want a quick reminder of what else has happened this year in the marketplace world, have a look at our website next week, because I will put the overview that I had originally planned for today's podcast in a blog post there to remind you what else has happened. So, and then have a lovely Christmas, I guess.
Thank you so much, Stefan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm also looking forward for our last episode before the holiday, and we will be back on January 9th with an outlook on the new marketplace year. We're currently doing a little survey amongst the marketplaces of Europe on their plans for 2025, and we're getting lots of interesting answers, which we will share with you the next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you wouldn't want to miss that, so better subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to us. And thanks for having us today.
Yeah, and thanks for having us this year. Have a great start into the new year, and see you in 2025.
Thank you. Catch up soon.
You listen to Let's Talk Marketplace,
The Marketplace podcast with Ingrid Lommer and Valerie Dichtel.